Hi everyone, Yasas que kalos tirsate to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're taking a Greek classic, portokalopita, and we're giving it a fall makeover. I'm going to be teaching you how to make my pumpkin phyllo custard cake. This is so delicious. It's going to have all the warm flavors of fall with pumpkin and cinnamon, just delicious warm spices. There's going to be toasted phyllo that melts into the custard and has a cake-like consistency. And then we pour a light syrup on top to sweeten it. This is not too sweet, but it's so simple to make, and it's beautiful if you want something cozy and sweet and delicious for the fall. Let me show you how I make my pumpkin spice phyllo cake. Okay, we're going to begin by preparing the phyllo part of the cake. So I have 1 pound of number 4 phyllo. I'm just going to take it out of its packaging and just cut it into strips just like this. Then they're going to go into 2 baking trays. I'm just going to separate them with my fingers, just loosen everything up and create one even layer. The oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. These are going to bake for about 15 minutes or until it's dried up and golden. And you can go in and move them around halfway through and switch the trays as well, so that way they bake evenly. Take them out of the oven and set them aside until they cool completely. In the meantime, we can make the syrup and the custard. So for the syrup, we need 1.5 cups of granulated sugar, 1.5 cups of water, and a cinnamon stick. You can add some orange zest if you want in here, or orange peel rather. This is going to cook over medium heat until it comes to a boil and until the sugar is fully dissolved. Take it off of the heat, stir in a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, and set it aside to cool completely. Okay, for the custard, we're going to take 8 ounces of cream cheese and then 4 large eggs. Now, before you add the eggs, it is a good idea to not do what I did and combine the cream cheese with the sugar. So 3/4 of a cup of sugar, and beat that together until everything is smooth. Otherwise, what's going to happen is what happened to me, which is really not a big deal because you won't see it in the finished product. But the cream cheese is going to kind of break and almost look like cottage cheese, and it's never going to reincorporate. I tried everything. I even took out a little hand whisk or hand mixer, and it still didn't solve the problem. But again, the end product, you can't see it. You can't see any of that in there. But if that bothers you as much as it's bothering me, then skip the eggs and just do the sugar and the cream cheese first, and then go in and add the eggs and the remaining ingredients. But you can add the eggs and the butter once everything is combined. Whisk that all together, and then we can add a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, 1 can or 15 ounces of pumpkin puree. Make sure you're using pumpkin puree and not pumpkin pie filling. Of course, you can make your own pumpkin puree, and I have a recipe online, but this time of year it's just abundant at the supermarket and it makes life so much easier. So pumpkin puree goes in. It has no additional seasoning, just plain cooked pumpkin, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/4 or 1/2 teaspoon of ground ginger, and we're going to whisk that all together with 1 teaspoon of baking powder and 2 cups of milk. Make sure that everything is at room temperature so that way it whisks evenly. Whisk that all together, and then you can add in the phyllo that's nice and crispy and toasted at this point. Fold it in using a spatula, a little bit at a time until it's all combined. We're going to transfer this to our baking pan. I have a 9 by 13 inch baking pan here. You can lightly grease it if you want to. It's just going to make it easier to slice and remove the cake later on. Smooth everything out so that way everything is nice and even on top. This is going to bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes. It's going to puff up and get nice and golden. Once it comes out of the oven, we're just going to pierce it with a skewer or a toothpick all around and add all of the syrup on top at this point. It's going to look like it's drowning in syrup, but in about 30 minutes or 35-40 minutes, the cake will absorb all of that moisture and sweetness, and it's just going to be perfectly sweetened and ready to serve. Now you can wait until this cools down a little bit if you want to serve it at room temperature, or you could even chill it. Cut it into slices, and I love to serve this with some ice cream, but you can serve this with homemade whipped cream if you'd like, and of course some Greek coffee. It's ready to serve. And there you have it, just like that, the cake is ready. The hardest part is waiting for all of that syrup to absorb into the cake and soften it up. You can serve this at room temperature, or you can chill it overnight in the refrigerator and then top it with ice cream or homemade whipped cream and a little kiss of cinnamon on top. If you have some candied walnuts or pecans, chop those up and put them on top for a little bit of crunch and spice. Let me do the taste test. So good. You just slice into the cake so easily, and it has a little bit of the texture of like a bread pudding. I would say it's closer to a bread pudding than a cake, but we call it a cake or a pie in Greece. Pita is basically anything that's in pie form with phyllo. We call it a pita. Sometimes cakes too, we call those pita as well. This is so delicious. I hope you give it a try. Let me know how you're serving it in the comment section down below. My favorite way to serve this is slightly warm. So right when it's made, let it cool down a little bit with a scoop of vanilla whipped cream on top, and you'll be in heaven. The full recipe is on the blog, dimitrasdishes.com. You can head on over there to print it out and find hundreds of other delicious recipes. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, us.